I'm Tom from Do It Yourself Automation, and I'm here to share that the new review that I've done of the Fitbit Sense smartwatch, which is the newest smartwatch from Fitbit, has just gone live. The watch goes out tomorrow, so I actually got it a little bit in advance. I've got it with me right here. I'm going to take it off and be able to hold it up. And my review of it, which is really kind of a deep dive, but an initial review anyway, is on 10.medium.com. That's 10.medium.com. And it's about a 13-minute read, just to give you a heads up there. So I do go into quite a lot of depth, as far as I can go in the very beginning portion of testing this watch. And the reason I say that is that a lot of the functions on the watch, again, here it is, a lot of the functions on here are things that are tracking your stats over a long period of time and using Fitbit's analytics to look at things like your stress levels day to day, and to look at sleep and health. It can measure your temperature. It can do a lot of things that no other watch on the market can do. So that's why I say on my review it's the best health tracking watch out there. Is it as stylish and refined as an Apple Watch? No, but I think it is the best health tracking watch out there at the moment. So I'm going to read a little bit of my review. If you have questions, feel free to put them into the comments. If you're doing this live, I'll try to answer them. If you're looking at this after the fact, put them in the comments and I'll try to reply there. And you can follow along in the review at 10.medium.com. So I've worn a Fitbit nearly every day for the past decade, from the company's original paperclip blank tracker launched in 2009, which really was like a little paperclip that you wear on your belt, to its recent Versa smartwatch. And that's what I wore, and I've been reviewing up until I received the Sense. That's why I was really excited this week to receive the Sense. Here it is. It's Fitbit's newest wearable, and it's its most advanced smartwatch to date. This goes for $329.95, and it's packed with more sensor technology than any other watch on the market. And again, it starts to ship officially tomorrow on the 25th. I see a question there in the chat. How's the resolution look? That's actually, I think, one of the strongest points here. You can't see it super well on the screen here, just because it's not going to focus really well on my camera. But it does have an AMOLED screen, so the quality of the screen is actually really good. It's about 400, a little under 400 pixels square, which doesn't seem like much, but because, again, it's really tiny screen, it actually is, I think, really good quality. You can see on the review, if you go to 10.medium.com, I have some close-ups, especially if you scroll down to the again. Yeah, if you go down to the part, whoop, there goes the menu. Yeah, so if you go into, whoa, this is crazy. All right, well, I'm going to have this overlay over me for a moment, I guess. If you go into the review there, you can actually see my pictures of the watch. So I have some really good close-ups taken with my Leica Q, which is a professional mirrorless camera, so you can see really close up what the screen looks like. Resolution, I think, is looking really great. Probably one of the strong suits design-wise. Another question here, the button. Yeah, so this is kind of already standing out to me as one of the weirdest things about the watch. So one of the questions was, have I activated the button accidentally? Yeah, definitely. So I cover this in the review, again, 10.medium.com. There's a bunch more details, but it's this weird, it's like an inductive button on the side of the watch. It's not a real button. So this is unlike with the Versa, where you have a button that's like a real physical button. This is like a little groove in the side of the watch, and they call it a solid state button. So if you put your finger over it, that activates functions. So you can see I can press it in. But as you can see, I'm trying to activate this, and it's really just not working great. Okay, now I got it. But you do have to kind of mash it a bunch of times. So it is really weird. I definitely have activated it accidentally, bumping this with my wrist. And the other thing I would say is sort of weird about the button on here is that if you're in the menu, so again, now the screen's off, I'm going to have to really mash it to get this going. Sorry, this is backwards. I'm going to go into the menu here. If I go into an actual app on here, you'd expect that if you hit the button, it would go back one level in the menu, right? I mean, that's sort of logical. But actually, if I press the button, it's going to take me all the way back to the home screen. Or if you press for too long, like I just did there, it's actually trying to activate my Alexa connection. and I don't have my phone with me, so it's just basically failing on that. So the button, weird from a hardware perspective, because again, you have to sort of cover it and mash it with your finger. Also weird, I think, from a software perspective in the menus, because I would expect that if I press this once, it's going to take me back to the last stage of the menu, but actually takes me all the way back to the home screen. So to go back in the menu, you actually don't press the button, you have to swipe across the screen, and the swipe gesture is not super sensitive, so you actually have to really get over to the screen and like start over at the bezel and go all the way over to go back. And so yeah, it's a little bit weird there. But that's sort of, yeah, that's one of the things that other reviewers have pointed out too. That button is really strange, and I definitely have found that to be the case. One thing I would say is once you get used to it, if you kind of hook your finger under it and then mash it down, that helps. When it's actually on your wrist, accessing it past the bevel there is just really kind of weird. So yeah, feel free to ask any other questions in the chat there. I'll keep going through my review here. So I got this about 3 days early with a premium access program. So I've been able to do a fair amount of using this. You can check out my other videos on the channel here where I've gone into more detail about some of these things. But I think this is another thing I would say. This 10 got this so that I could do the review. So I'm not being paid by Fitbit. They didn't give me a review unit even. This is totally my own opinions, not influenced in any way by them. So just to point that out. I think what they've done with this watch is really double down on what they do best, and that's tracking health. So is it the best design? Is it the most stylish UI? No, probably not. But in terms of the sensors that are actually on the watch and how it handles health tracking, I really do think that this is the best thing on the market right now. And I think it's actually better than the Apple Watch when it comes to that. So why is that? I'll skip ahead here to the part of my review. Again, 10.medium.com if you want to read the full review. Again, it's about 13 minutes, so prepare yourself for a very deep dive. But as I say in the review, it's literally studded with sensors. So let's talk about a couple of those. There's the proprietary Pure Pulse sensor. So this is a continuous heart rate monitor, and this is on the back of the watch. Because it's not on my wrist right now, you can't see, but it has little, there it goes, to cover it up. It has these little blinking green LEDs. It's going to shine that into your skin, and then it's going to read back from that your heart rate. So it's getting that. This is sort of a standard thing that they do on all of the Fitbits. So that's not new to this, but what is new versus the Versa, it does have a built-in GPS sensor. So if you're doing a walk or something like that, any kind of exercise, then you actually don't need to sync it with your phone like you did with the Versa in order to get GPS. You can actually get GPS right on the watch. And because of that, the form factor is a little different than the Versa. It's just a bit thicker to accommodate that GPS chip. Not really a problem as far as I've seen so far, but just to be aware that, yeah, it does have that built-in GPS. Good feature, I think. One of the new things for this watch, for the Sense, is the EDA sensor. So EDA stands for electrodermal activity, and it is basically a stress sensor. And that's actually not on the back of the watch. The EDA is on the front, and it's actually built into the bezel. So if I hold this close, you can see there's like a little line dividing the bezel on either side. There's like two pieces electrically. And to do an EDA reading, you go into the menu here. Again, I got to mash this button to even start it. I always forget that. So here's this. I've got the EDA scan. I'm going to go in there. I do a quick scan or a guided scan. The quick scan is 2 minutes. And you basically, I'm not going to do it right now, but you basically cover the front of the watch with your hand for 2 minutes. And it's reading electrically on your skin the conductivity of your skin. And from that, it can actually detect, and in theory anyway, and EDA is a pretty well-studied metric, so it does work reasonably well. It can detect how stressed you are, so physical stress in your body. It's basically detecting the conductivity of your skin. So if you have sweating, the micro sweats, almost like a polygraph would do. That's built into the watch. You can do these sessions. And one thing that's weird to me is that I expected you cover it, you get your reading, and it would tell you, maybe on a 1 to 100 scale, how stressed you are physically. What it actually does is it gives you this graph of EDA responses, which is like the spikes that you get from having these little micro sweats if you're stressed out. And it'll tell you at the beginning of the session and then throughout the session. You can do up to a 60-minute session. 2 minutes is, again, the minimum. It'll actually tell you what your responses were at different points in the session. So if you calmed yourself down, you're supposed to, listen to calming music, or they have like guided meditations that they walk you through in the app that you're supposed to do to calm down using that setting. It was weird to me. I thought you just cover it, get a reading. It's weird to me that you have to do this like guided meditation to actually get a stress reading. But then once you do get it, they're building that in. And again, I cover this in more detail in the review. They're building it into a stress management metric, which is a 1 to 100 scale that you get in the Fitbit app if you have premium. And it builds in the EDA readings, but it also builds in a bunch of other stuff like heart rate variability, which is what you get with a service like Welltory, for example. And it's also building in all kinds of other, your breathing rate when you're sleeping. It's building in information about your resting heart rate versus your heart rate when you're sleeping. It's building in overall just sleep data. So how good was your sleep? How long was your sleep? And they do create this metric. So I have a question here. How do you make the watch look more impressive in a business environment? Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely, you're not going to find, and one of the questions was watch face, straps, etc. So you're not going to find, like you would with the Apple Watch, there's an Apple Watch design that costs $114,000. I linked to it in the review, 10.medium.com. It's live now. Or linked to it in the review. Somebody has a $114,000 diamond-studded Apple Watch. You're not going to find that for the Fitbit Sense. It is definitely more on the functional side. That said, they do have a variety of different bands that you can swap in. Try to get this going. It is fairly simple to switch out the bands on the watch. And it's really just, they show you this actually when you do setup. You just press this button in and pull the band out. And then you can buy designer bands and you can get things that are like a metallic kind of feel. This is just like a silicone, like very fitness oriented, but it's simple enough to do that you could even do that throughout the day, swapping out bands if you wanted to like go to the gym. With this one, that's going to be a little bit better for your skin, I think, than like a metal band. And then if you're going into now there's not so many work meetings you're going to, but if you're going to a Zoom call and you want to have something that looks a little more stylish, you're going out or whatever, you can actually swap in one of those designer bands. And you can go to Fitbit's website and buy those. I don't know that they have them on Amazon yet, but yeah, you can customize that a bit. That's a good segue, though, into talking about the band itself. This is something I think they're doing a lot better because they basically stole it from the Apple Watch. With the Versa, you had this band and then you had a little like silicone clasp that went onto the band here, and you would tuck the end of the strap into that and it would slide around. And I found that basically that thing was so weak that in about maybe 3 months after I got it, it broke. So I just had the end of the strap like flapping around as I was wearing the Versa. And I ended up just taking a pair of scissors and cutting it off. So it just went to the length that I needed it. This is a little bit better, I think. It mirrors a lot of the third-party aftermarket straps that you can get for the Fitbit Versa. And it basically just cribs the design from the Apple Watch in a lot of cases too. So you put the strap on here. You can see there's this little stud that goes through one of the holes here. And I'll just try to put this on. It's weird to do it without it being on my wrist, but it goes on through there. And then the end of the strap just tucks into that piece and kind of keeps it all contained. So I think this is actually a lot better of a strap design. I imagine this is going to hold up a lot better. But if you do want to check out more of the straps, if you go to 10.medium.com, check out my review. If you link to the Sense page from Fitbit, from that first paragraph, actually, I think I'm linking to them. The price should link right to their page. If you go there and check out the bands they have available, they do have 2 options to start. There's a lunar white band, and mine is the graphite carbon design. So it's the dark band. There's another one there. And then again, if you scroll down on the page, I'm just trying to look exactly which ones they have. They do have Fitbit metallic gold bands. This is, I'm going to butcher the name here, but Victor Golmode. It sounds like some kind of designer there. And they do have a Pendleton for Fitbit, so they have some fancier bands for more business context. Watch faces is a great question. So I'm going to end my still trying to get me to do my EDA session here. So you can change the watch face. This is the stock face. I actually like it. I think it's a better design face than some of the other ones that are out there. One that you can switch it to is there's one that includes an SpO2 reading on there. And that's one of the other sensors that this has now. You can actually get your blood oxygen level, but weirdly, it's not in real time. It's for the previous night. So they're aggregating for a full night's worth of data and then giving it to you on the watch face for the previous night, kind of like your sleep score, which you can actually see here. But in the Fitbit app, you can customize the different watch faces. And if you're going for a business context, they have ones that even simulate like an analog, old style analog watch. And the final thing I'd say about that is that there's two modes you can use for the screen. One is an always on mode. And that means what I've got here, where even if I'm not using the watch, it's actually still showing me the screen. Speaking of always on, I'm gonna get my camera going here again, make sure it doesn't time out on me. Always on mode, you get about half the battery life, so you get about 2 or 3 days of battery life. With the other mode, the screen is off, and you have to mash that weird hardware button, or solid state button I was talking about, to get the screen to even come up. But then once it does, you can use it, and then it'll time out and go black again. That actually might be better, in a business context. So, you're not checking your time on the watch all the time. You're not seeing, notifications come in or anything like that. So maybe enable that mode, and it does give you, again, a bit more battery life. Feel free, again, here. So people who are just joining the live stream, if you want to check out what I'm doing, you can go to 10.medium.com. That's where my full review is live. If you have questions you want me to answer here, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer questions in real time about the watch. And in the meantime, I'll start up going back through here about what I cover in the review in terms of the sensors on the watch. So when I left off, I was talking about the EDA sensor, that's measuring your stress levels. I just mentioned SpO2 very briefly. But let's talk about some of the other sensors that are being added on here. Heart rate, again, was on there always. 2 new ones that I think are really cool. One of them is skin temperature. So I think the way they're doing this is the whole back plate here is metallic, and I imagine they're reading your skin temperature from that back plate on the watch. So it's against your wrist all the time, and then measuring your skin temperature with that. Obviously, in the age of COVID, that's kind of a helpful thing. It'll tell you potentially if you have a fever. And Fitbit has actually done some studies. There's some of my other colleagues on 10 have delved into this really deeply. Fitbit has actually done some studies where they've shown that using data from their watches, you can predict if somebody gets COVID-19 in advance. So skin temperature obviously is going to add to that. So the better ability to detect if you have a fever, even beyond COVID-19, or just detect if you're coming down with a flu, if you're overtraining in a workout context. And also for female users, it can be used for menstrual cycle tracking, tracking fertile periods and that kind of thing. Again, I think body temperature is going to be an element that they're going to add in more and more. Like SpO2, though, I would point out that you can only access that data in the app, and it's actually delayed in that case by, you have to get 3 days of a baseline before you even get it. So I got this, again, on a pre-sale program. So I got it about 4 days before it went out for the general consumer market. And so I've only been wearing it for 2 nights. So I actually don't even have enough data to evaluate that feature. But the thing I'll point out, my hands-on review, this is sort of a first look, is at 10.medium.com. If you follow me there, or if you follow me here on my channel, 10.medium.com/TomSmith585, that's my handle there. I'm going to do about probably 2 weeks or a month, I'm going to do a more detailed review where I look kind of long-term at how this works, and provide a lot more sort of feedback on what it's like to wear it. And one of the things I'll cover in more detail there is that temperature tracking. Then the final sensor that they've added on here that I think is really exciting is a ECG sensor. So it's electrocardiogram, and that's actually measuring your heart, not just your heart rate, but actually the heart rhythms, the electrical rhythms of your heart. And it's going to use, I believe, the same sensor as the EDA. So you'll be able to put your fingers on there, and it'll actually take a ECG reading like you would get if you went to the doctor. And the idea here is that they can diagnose certain heart conditions like AFib, atrial fibrillation. I'm not sure how to pronounce that exactly, but AFib can be a very serious condition. It's something that people can, get really bad complications from. So with this watch, you could actually put your fingers on there in a couple of minutes, you can get a reading, and it actually just got FDA clearance about a week before this shipped. So they're right down to the wire of being able to actually use that feature. They did get FDA clearance, so it's actually a medical device in that sense. And it's actually accurate enough that, again, they got that clearance and CE clearance in Europe. That feature is going to roll out in October. Fitbit just told me this morning. I asked, where do I get the app to do that? And they said, not yet. In October, they're going to roll it out. So definitely stay tuned. As soon as I get that, I'll do a review here on the channel. Cover how to actually do it, but what it will be is a separate app. It's not clear to me whether it's an app on the watch or on your phone, but if you do go to Fitbit's site for the Sense, they have kind of a preview of what that looks like. And basically it's a one-wire ECG like you would get, not a full one like you would get if you went to a cardiologist, but if you go to your GP, you go to the cardiologist, you're going to get a much more detailed one. If you go to your GP and get one, it's sort of similar to that. And again, it is a medical device quality on that, which is really exciting. So potentially in two ways, this could save your life. One of them is if you have a heart condition that's not been diagnosed. And one of the problems with AFib is that if you're in a doctor's office and you're not actually having the condition at that instant, when they do the ECG, they might miss it. So normally you have to wear a Holter monitor. It's something you wear around for days or weeks. They're expensive. If you don't know that you have a heart condition or have a history, your doctor might not even think of it. With this, you can take readings pretty frequently, and it's always on your wrist, so it's easy to do, and you might diagnose a condition that you can then follow up with your doctor if it says anything like that. But you might see something that you can follow up on that could be really serious if you didn't catch it. And then the other one is that COVID prediction that they're starting to work on. That's not a feature that's enabled for everybody, but there's a study you can enroll in, and it's something that Fitbit is actively exploring of saying they want to get more clearances for that. And that's kind of a nice segue, I think, into some of the sleep tracking. So one thing they're also working on with the SpO2 meter on the watch is to do a diagnosis of sleep apnea. So if you have sleep apnea, you're actually stopping breathing throughout the night for various periods of time, and that can be really serious. And you might not know that you have it again. So the watch is actually with the SpO2 meter. Hopefully, Fitbit is hoping to get FDA clearance on that to be able to actually diagnose sleep apneas. So I'll open, if there's any questions, feel free to put, I think we have a good number of people on the stream here. Feel free to put in any questions in the chat. If you're just joining us, I'm just going through the Fitbit Sense here. You can read my full review, 10.medium.com. It just went live. It's about a 13-minute read. So there's a lot of detail there, a lot of original photos, close-ups, and everything like that of the watch. Another couple of things we can get into. Exercise. So obviously, as a fitness tracker, this is a really good device for measuring workouts. So I'm going to go in and actually try to pull this up. We can look at it together. So you can go into the exercise tab on here. You can choose a bunch of different kinds of exercise, and I think some of these are pretty funny. I mean, bike is obviously normal, but and hike, interval. But then they have kickboxing, martial arts. Maybe pre-COVID, it's a little bit funny to think of. Maybe some people are still doing that, but getting together for like a boot camp class or a martial arts session, probably a lot of people aren't able to do that who might want to right now. I joke in the piece, they don't have like household things like trying to lift a bunch of bottled water from your front porch and carry it inside or anything. Things you might actually be doing during the pandemic. This kind of makes me feel like some FOMO actually looking through these, and maybe feel a little bad about myself that I'm not out there doing kickboxing during the pandemic. But you can track your exercise. So you go into one of these exercise trackers. If you do a run or a hike, the GPS will connect. Again, there's onboard GPS on the watch, unlike with the Versa. And you can start that up. It's connecting, and then it'll actually track your workout. You can get intervals, you get distance. If you do have the GPS enabled, you get a map, heart rate data, number of steps, calories burned, really detailed information on there that you get after the fact. If you do use this on the watch with the exercise, so you get pace data here, you got distance, total time, my different zones, go back to the time there, steps, calories burned. Obviously, I'm not doing anything. I'm not sure why it thinks it's measuring my heart rate because they don't actually have it on. Yeah, GPS signal, and then you can get a map of your run or walk or hike or whatever you're doing after. Okay, so another question. Have you tried the Google Assistant yet? How good is its hearing? So that's a great question. I actually don't use Google Assistant for my smart assistant, but I do use Alexa. So let me show how that works on the watch. And this is actually a really cool new feature. It's not new to Fitbit. They actually had it on the Versa. Let me just refresh my camera here. They did have it on the Versa, but it's a feature that I think is great here on the Sense. And you can basically enable either Google Assistant or Alexa as a smart assistant. There's a microphone. I'm assuming it's this. You can see this little dot here on the watch itself. And so in order to actually get that, all you do is take the weird hardware button on the side here, and you mash that as a long press. And that's going to pull up, you can see Alexa. Now it's saying to me, sync device and Fitbit mobile app, let app run in background to use Alexa. So I'm not sure why she's not syncing. Let me grab my phone and see if we can get that going. But to answer your question, it actually works really well when it's not having trouble syncing. I'm not sure again why it's having that issue. Let me try to pull this up. We'll sync the watch. We'll make sure that we can actually, oh, I don't have Bluetooth on. Yeah, that's why. So let me go ahead and turn Bluetooth on, and then we're going to go ahead and take a look at how this works for you. Okay, hopefully this will work now. So let me go ahead and mash the button again. What's the weather in San Francisco? Okay, so you can see her thinking. And then I'm going to get a response. Here we go. Currently in San Francisco. Here's my weather. I got my report. So it listens pretty well. I think I haven't had any issues with it not hearing my question. And it has your full Alexa setup if you do sync it to your Alexa. What I've run into is, like you just saw there, problems where it's too far from my phone. I switched Bluetooth off. Any number of reasons why it doesn't sync properly. That's usually the thing that stops it from working, more so than it not being able to hear me. But as long as it can hear me well, yeah, I haven't had any problems with that. And one of the things I think is awesome with this is that it's tied into all of your existing Alexa functions. So for me, I have a lot of smart home things. Obviously, this is DIY home automation. So I can say, for example, set my thermostat to 74. So say the AC is at 74. So it's actually connected to my Nest thermostat, and it will actually change the temperature in my house now. So if you're walking around and you're like, oh wow, it's too cool in here, too hot in here, you can actually press the button on your watch and change your thermostat. You can switch your lights on and off, any of your home automation functions. You can also access your to-do list. You can add things to your shopping list. So there's a lot that you can do on there with Alexa and with Google Assistant too. So you have Alexa or Google Assistant. I just don't use Google Assistant, so I didn't set that up. But you get the choice when you're configuring the watch in the first place to choose one of those two different assistants. So great question. Again, somebody has asked that question in the chat. You can probably see if anybody has questions, feel free to put them there. I'm happy to answer as best as I can. Again, if you're just joining us, this is going through my review of the Fitbit Sense smartwatch. 10.medium.com is where you can see the full review. 13 minutes of detailed, deep dive. And as I mentioned before, I'll also be going into some of the sort of more detailed long-term metrics as I wear this for a longer time. How does the premium service augment the experience? Is the experience okay without it? Like a pile of meaningless data? Yeah, great question. So that's, I think, a good time now to bring up my phone. And let's take a look at the Fitbit app. And again, sorry, this is all backwards. But you can see in here, this is the app. Three new things that have been added in here that I think are cool. One of them is the stress management tab. So this is actually that sort of stress metric that I wanted to see. And this takes into account a bunch of different factors. You can self-rate your stress level, but it's also looking at responsiveness. So this is heart rate variability, resting heart rate elevation, and your EDA readings from the EDA sensor on the bezel of the watch. Exertion, so daily steps, weekly activity, and your fitness fatigue, so if you've been overworking out. And then it's also looking at sleep patterns, so proportion of REM to deep sleep, which can indicate things like anxiety or depression. And it's also looking at sleep debt over time, how restless you are at night. So they're taking a bunch of things into account, and then they're giving you this stress management score. The catch is that to access the breakdown of that data, you actually have to have a premium service. So you have to be able to go in, and if you want to get into those detailed scores, have premium, and that's a little bit of an annoying thing. One thing that's good though is that Fitbit does provide a 6-month trial of premium with the Sense smartwatch. So if you want to test it out and see, how that's working, that's definitely something that can be useful. So let's take a look at what else is new in here. This health metrics tab is the other new one. So if you go into health metrics, you can actually pull up the data. So this is breathing rate, heart rate variability, skin temperature, which again, I haven't worn enough to get it. SpO2, you have to get through the clock face, and your resting heart rate, a graph over time of that. So again, these are really sort of the metrics behind these other functions on here. And then once I do have it, you get this temperature baseline where you can be able to go in and actually see whether your temperature is elevated. And again, these readings are happening overnight. So you can't get an instantaneous reading necessarily, but you can see if you had a fever or you seem to be trending in the wrong direction with that. And again, accessing a lot of those metrics, I believe, is a premium function. So you can get the data, I think. I think you may even be able to get the score, but breaking it down is something that they are going to include only with premium. And it's, I think, a $10 a month charge or something to do it. I do have premium, you can see up here. But yeah, that is kind of a downside. There's other things you get with it, the guided meditation sessions you can do with your EDA readings. Another nice premium feature there. But yeah, great question. The final sort of thing I would say here, and then I'll take any more questions people have, and then and otherwise sign off. Basically, I think, again, style-wise, actually hold the watch up at this point, style-wise, and in terms of the UI, there's definitely still some things that need work. That button is really weird. The interface can be a little bit strange. But I think style-wise, in terms of the UI, Fitbit has never been the best option out there necessarily. I think Apple sort of has that market cornered. The questions about business wearing this and having a nicer band. Apple's going to do that better than Fitbit. But what this really does, I think, better than anybody else, which I think is Fitbit's strong suit overall, is that the health tracking is just excellent. I mean, you're not going to find Apple can do some ECG stuff, but to have the sort of deep relationship with the FDA that Fitbit is developing for things like sleep apnea, to have that stress tracking that's taking into account heart rate variability, the EDA sensor to look at skin conductivity, the skin temperature sensor. There's so many different health metrics that they're able to pull in here. And I think, whereas with the Versa, they were trying to go for style, they were trying to go for an Apple Watch competitor on the smartwatch, with having different apps. I think they've sort of realized that that's not really what their strong suit is, and they've played to their strong suit much more with the Sense by pivoting really strongly towards health and health tracking. And I think, again, with having that stress management, it's a great thing for 2020. It's everybody's stressed out. I'm stressed out, so having that's really helpful. Being able to quantify that, get recommendations, be able to work on your sleep and see that reflected in the stress metrics, taking those EDA readings, knowing if you're getting sick, potentially getting sick with the skin temperature tracking. All those things are really health metrics. And that, I think, is what Fitbit is doing best and better than anybody else, better than Apple even, with the Fitbit Sense. And that's, for me, that's most important. Fitness tracking, all these other functions I'm going to get into, how well the stress tracking works, how you can improve stress levels over time. I think that's something that's going to be really interesting. And again, if you follow 10.medium.com or subscribe here, in about probably 2 weeks or a month, once I've really had a chance to wear this for a long time period, I'm going to report back on that. And we'll try to do another live stream at that point too. But if you want to track health, yeah, I just think Sense, this is really, they're pivoting back in that direction, and I think they've done a really good job of it. Another question here, how long do you think the watch is going to be relevant until they release a Sense 2? Yeah, that's a great question. So we had the the Ionic, and then we had the Versa, which is basically the Ionic minus the GPS. Then they had the Versa 2. I think they even had a Versa 3 in there, where they added some minor things, like they added the voice assistant back in there. I think basically this is going to last through the holiday season. Realistically, they probably could have used a couple more months to work out the bugs in the UI. I think they wanted to ship this before the holidays so that people can get it, coming into Black Friday. If Amazon is, I think, rescheduling Prime Day, all that stuff, I think they wanted to have this out there, and they're probably going to keep releasing firmware updates and improve a lot of those UI issues, including the weirdness of the button and the menus and that kind of thing, better tracking. Again, I mean, the ECG was just approved by the FDA about a week before this went out, and the app for that's not going to come out until October. Fitbit told me today. So, that's, I think, going to be, they're really just working on this, I think, as they're rolling it out. I would still get one. I got this through 10, actually purchased the watch so that we wouldn't be working, with Fitbit. Fitbit didn't pay me to do this or anything. This is a totally independent review. But I would definitely buy it if you're, on the fence about it, if you are a Fitbit user already. Even though there are those sort of weird UI issues, I still think it's the best if you're just wanting to do health tracking, fitness tracking. When will they come out with a new one? I think this is going to be relevant through the holidays, probably into early 2021. My guess is that they probably will roll out changes, but this is a pretty impressive piece of hardware. I mean, really a lot of the innovation here is in the hardware, putting the EDA sensor in, skin temperature, an FDA cleared ECG, the new AMOLED screen. It's pretty good in the sensor perspective. So I can't imagine what else they would put in the short-term hardware side. I think we'll see software improvements, we'll see UI improvements, we'll see these new apps rolling out and that kind of thing. And I think we're going to see that happen probably over the next few months. Any other questions I'll take, otherwise I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much. Go to 10.medium.com, read the full review. You can see 13 minutes of in-depth coverage there. Follow me there. Follow me here on my channel to see the updated reviews and everything. And if you have any questions after the fact, feel free to email me, tom@gadoimages.com, G-A-D-O images.com. Leave responses on the 10.medium.com article, or put them in the comments down here, and I'll try my best to answer. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody.